Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Engineering Experts Group podcast. Our objective is to thank the contributors of the infrastructure space. I'm really grateful to be with you today. My name is Sally Buckley, and I'm the Managing Director of Pragmatic Success. Our team is engaged in management consulting, executive search, and executive coaching. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Freddie Fuller II, who is Vice President of Jacobs. So let me give you a little bit of background about Freddie, and then we'll share with you what the objective is for this particular podcast, and then go from there. So I just want to introduce Freddie here. Freddie's a proven leader and a true public servant. Freddie Fuller has spent his entire professional career in public transportation industry. For more than 24 years, Freddie has utilized his education, experience, and relationships to develop transportation policies, procedures to enhance the delivery of transit services. Freddie is a natural relationship builder committed to developing, delivering, and driving business growth strategy. He's also the vice president of Geographic Sales Manager for the Mid-Atlantic, which includes DC, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, all at Jacobs. And let me just give you a little more information. Freddie has earned his undergraduate degree in urban studies from the Virginia Commonwealth University, 2 master's degrees at Georgia Tech in city planning and civil engineering. He has completed his coursework towards his doctoral degree at Virginia Tech in planning, governance, and globalization. He and his wife, Tasha, reside in Woodbridge, Virginia, and are proud parents of 4 children. Freddie loves to work out and regularly is an avid runner. In addition, Freddie has been gifted with the honors of Distinguished Leadership Award, Outstanding Public Transportation Business Member of the Year Award, and is also published. So Freddie, before you come on, I just want to let your audience know that what we're going to be doing today is talking a little bit about your professional history, which is quite impressive, your leadership role, which also is very advanced, and also to talk about the future, and that it could be related to Jacobs Engineering specifically, or how you see the future of the industry. So I just want to welcome you to the podcast. I know your audience is going to be very excited to hear your story. So thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sally, for having me. And I know that you mentioned my leadership role here at Jacobs. And in addition to that, I most recently served as the chair of COMPTO, the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, and served in that capacity for the past 3 years until this past August. And I'm currently the Secretary Treasurer for the American Public Transportation Association, better known as APTA. And I have only a few days left as I head off tomorrow to Orlando to the APTA Transform Conference. And we have a board meeting on Saturday where I will no longer be the Secretary Treasurer after a 3-year run managing APTA's finances through such a tumultuous time in the pandemic. So certainly an honor and a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I really enjoyed our pre-interview engagement that we had last week, and I just wanted to invite you to share your story with the audience that got you enthusiastic about this work in planning and engineering and all of your it's a really great story. So go ahead, Freddie.
Well, one of the things you asked me previously is how did I get involved in transportation? And I take you to my days back at Virginia Commonwealth, better known as VCU. I used to travel frequently between Richmond, Virginia, and Washington. And every time I'd hit the Springfield area, lo and behold, there would be traffic, whether it was due to construction or just general congestion. And I became very curious about that. And as a result, I started focusing all of my studies on transportation and trying to gain a better understanding of congestion management. And when I went on to graduate school to study city planning, I decided to focus on transportation as a specialty area in that program.
That's fantastic. And so then what? I mean, your story is so expansive.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
Yeah.
just to get into it a little bit, people say, well, how did you, wind up in public transportation? And,
Right.
I didn't fall into it by happenstance like so many people do. I was intentional about it. And during my undergraduate career, I had a couple of colleagues who decided to get internships at GRTC, which is the transit system, Manning's, who currently works for
Right.
Metrolinx in LA. And then after Vita had the internship, Parker wound up becoming an intern. And I happened to be in a graduate planning course with the both of them at the time and find out about GRTC. And then I would always visit Keith as he, from being an intern to the director of planning and grants management, him on occasion, and we would talk. And when I went to graduate at Georgia Tech, which was something I wanted to do for a number of years, because they had a joint degree program in both city planning and civil engineering with a focus on transportation, uh, Rick Simonetta, who was the general manager and CEO of MARTA, came to speak at one of my transportation planning classes. And he talked about his transit career, and that pretty much sealed the deal. So it was a combination of knowing Keith and Vita, talking to Keith on the basis, and then hearing from Rick when he talked about his career. And certainly there are many others that influenced me. But those individuals helped kind of guide me to where I wanted to be. And what I decided to do at Georgia Tech is I focused all my research
Hmm.
on transportation, and specifically public transportation. And in fact, when I did my option paper as a requirement to graduate, I worked with MARTA and gathered data from there to do a suburb commuter study as my final research paper to graduate. So everything I did in school was related to transit. And then as I transitioned to the workplace, I was intentional about subscribing to Passenger Transport, a publication that's issued by the American Public Transportation Association. And I would only apply to transit jobs. And I figured the way to get a job in transit is to apply for jobs in transit. And that's what I did.
Right.
Continued to apply and interview until I landed an opportunity with a management company with Prince George's County to operate
Hmm.
bus service. And so shortly after graduating from grad school, I became the assistant general manager of what is known as bus in Prince George's County and operated that system, hired all of the staff, including the admin staff, the supervisors, the bus operators, earned my commercial driver's license, taught the operation of driving and other driving skills, and managed that system on a daily basis, including dispatching pullouts, uh, fare boxes, managing the maintenance sub-consultant that we had to provide the maintenance on our vehicles. And it was quite an operation to cut your teeth coming straight out of graduate school. Got me entrenched in the industry very quickly. Beyond that, I had the opportunity to join or actually apply to APTA, and it
Right.
was in its infancy at that time. I was selected application process in the second class of leadership after the class of 98 to 99. And
Mm.
that exposed me to so many public transportation leaders. I became getting involved with COMPTO, the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. And the cool thing about COMPTO, not only was it a place to network, it was a place to network people that looked like me, other Black
Mhm.
professionals doing what I aspired to do. And it presented a those leaders and gain insight and knowledge and just learn a lot and be able to develop some relationships that I still have to this day.
So, Freddie, those are two very significant associations. What are the sizes of those membership? Because the landscape is huge for both of them, isn't it?
Yeah, the landscape is huge for both of them, and now you put me on the spot.
It
And
doesn't.
I just
It's just.
I just
It's a
did a
very impressive.
presentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just did a presentation where I looked at the most recent APTA membership numbers. And give me a second here. I certainly would like to get these numbers right if you bear with me. I didn't expect I laugh because those membership numbers change,
I don't want to
and
put you on the spot.
no, it's all good. It's all good. I am known to manage well under fire, and I am able to do that, to think on my feet, and to be pretty productive at the same time. And if you give me 1 second, I'm opening up a document here. And because I like to be accurate with my stuff. You
Right.
don't know that about me, but just to give you a sense, in FY21 at APTA, we ended the year with 1,316 members.
That's great.
And yeah, just so you know, we had about 737 business members, and we had about 579 transit system and government members. And I
Okay.
won't say our numbers at COMPTO are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2,000 members right now,
It's a
with
lot of
about
exposure.
35, yeah, 35 chapters around the country, and now in Toronto with COMPTO. So COMPTO became international over the last year with its first international chapter located in Toronto. So that's a really big deal as COMPTO
Hmm.
continues to grow. We look at growing other chapters around the country and the world. So super
Hmm.
excited about that.
That's great. So
Yeah.
where are we? We're with the, yeah, we were with Prince George's County, correct? Yeah, your PT.
Prince George's County for almost 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I had the opportunity to go on to Richmond, Virginia, actually, and become the Director of Planning and Grants Management. My colleague Keith Parker was the Assistant General Manager, and another one of our good friends, Matt Tucker, was the Director of Planning and Grants Management at the time. And Keith was going to go on to greener pastures and do something else. And Matt got promoted to Assistant General Manager. Matt's currently the CEO of NCTD North County Transit District in Oceanside, California. And Matt's position as Director of Planning and Grants Management opened up. And I applied and interviewed and was selected for that role. And I spent 2 years at GRTC.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I went on to the National Transit Institute, better known as NTI, at Rutgers University, where they develop continuing ed programs for training professionals in the public transportation space. And I managed the advanced technology programs for about 3.5 years before I moved on to do something on my own. And I became independent for about 18 months. And COMPTO was one of my primary clients. And at that time, I helped COMPTO develop, and I managed the COMPTO City Internship Program, which is 17 years old today. I also did some work for Montgomery County on the ride-on bus system there. I helped develop a technical spec for a marketing program
Is
while I
it
was
while you're
also
with,
doing some.
is that why while you were with your own consulting firm at that point? Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah.
was consulting for both Montgomery County and COMPTO at the same time. And after about 18 months of, my wife said, it's time for you to go get a real job so you can have a
Mm-hmm.
regular paycheck. And I joined the District Department of Transportation. And I became a senior transportation planner in the summer of 2006. And a new mayor was elected in November. Mayor Adrian Fenty started office in January of 2007. He hired a new director of DDOT, Emeka Monime. And shortly after that, I received a call from my boss one day as I was heading into work. She said, I'm no longer with DDOT, but you are going to the new head of mass transit. You're going to be the associate director for the Mass Transit Administration. And that was all. It just comes at being ready to step in to a leadership role when that time comes up. And I was able to do that pretty seamlessly. I ultimately, I started off as interim, ultimately role and was selected and became the director and served in that capacity from 2007 to about October 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the transition from the public sector to the private sector in 2009. I was actually interviewing for another public sector job and was expecting a second interview with the city of Phoenix, Arizona, to be a deputy director for transit. And around that same time, asked me if I was interested in the private sector. I said, sure. They said, well, we're going to set up a dinner. I can't tell you the firm is. We're going to go to dinner and we're going to have a conversation. So I went to dinner and I found out that the firm was Cubic Transportation Systems, which is part of the Cubic Corporation out of San Diego, California. And they were looking for someone to lead business development in the Mid-Atlantic. And it was quite a surprising opportunity, and that kind of inside I inspired to know if I had the ability to take some of these contacts that I developed in public transportation and turn those into business opportunities. So I was given a chance. I was interviewed with Cubic. I spent an entire day in San Diego where I literally interviewed from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And even through lunch, I interviewed. I never stopped talking the entire time I was there that day. And they decided to hire me. And I was responsible for the Mid-Atlantic, dealing with the systems from South Jersey to DC. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Freddie, could you please tell your audience what Cubic actually does? It's important.
Yeah. Cubic Transportation Systems is the largest revenue management and fare collection provider globally. They manufacture vending machines and fare gates that you see in transit stations, whether they're subways or light rail stations. They also develop software for the payment processing, so the back office payment processing software that's associated with the fare collection system. So, at the time, here I am, a transit guy, certainly familiar with fare collection, having worked in transit for a number of years. And now I'm having, this opportunity to go out and talk about the software as well as the equipment and sell that agencies and also service existing clients and satisfy their needs. And I started focusing at PATCO, South Jersey, Maryland Transit at Baltimore, WMATA, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transportation Authority in Washington, D.C., and then primary focus areas. And then I had a colleague that was overseeing the Southeast. They decided to leave, and my territory expanded from not only the Mid-Atlantic to the Southeast. So ultimately, I was managing clients from Miami all the way up to South Jersey at so Miami-Dade Transit, the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, SFRTA, better known as Sunrail, and then MARTA in Atlanta, the Area Rapid Transit Authority. So during that time, I learned a lot about fare collection. I learned a lot about software and equipment. And I worked alongside lots of computer scientists, electrical and mechanical engineers, and certainly a lot of folk at Cubic were watching me to see if I could make that transition from the public to the private sector, because a lot of people have a challenge making that transition. But it worked out really well for me. I learned the technology and gained a better understanding, and learned what it felt like to sector side pursuing business opportunities in the public transportation space. Pursuing RFPs and writing proposals and such, and all of that was a great experience for me that ultimately led me to joining CH2M in 2015. And one of the primary reasons that what made me interested in CH2M is one, they had a technical approach to consulting in the A&E space that a lot of other firms didn't, because we focus on systems engineering, vehicle engineering, fare collection, at the time the largest fare collection consultant in the country. And I say that by the number of projects and the major systems that CH2M was consulting with. And obviously, that was in 2015, and then Jacobs acquired us in 2018 and rolled up all of that fare collection consulting work up under the Jacobs umbrella. And more recently, during my 6-year tenure, 6.5-year tenure now, last October of 2020, I became the lead for the transit payment systems team. And then in March of 2021, I interviewed for the Geographic Sales Manager position, which I currently serve in, was selected and started in this capacity in April of this year. Been in the role about 7 months now and having a really good time as I've kind of from being a transit operations guy to a fare collection business development to being a fare collection consultant to leading sales for the Mid-Atlantic region, which you referenced, DC,
Right.
Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Delaware for all of infrastructure now, not just transportation, but all modes of transportation, water, as well as the built environment. And I'm having a lot of fun as I lead our team, coach our team, and encourage our team to be successful and be winners in this space.
Fantastic.
And certainly enjoying the ride.
I love it. Freddie, just from a perspective of observing you from this point backwards, right? Or backwards, the evolution of your change and choices, right? Of where you were in the public sector, moving to Cubic, CH2M Hill coming and saying, hey, we have the same, that must have been a big decision point, I would imagine, to go from Cubic to CH. They're different entities. I mean, for your audience, they're very different entities. Could you, because that's a really cool evolution, right? It's a fantastic way to evolve, but not a natural evolution.
Yeah. One of the things I would say is, all these choices weren't my own. I'm a very resilient leader, and I'm super transparent. I was laid off from Cubic in 2015.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know. I'll say I didn't know what was next, but I knew what I was interested in, and I'm a different kind of guy. I believe in using my network. I leverage my network. I'm a dot connector, and I literally, as Cubic executed their reduction in force, and I took it in stride. I literally took every business card in my possession, and I emailed everyone who was on those business cards. And I said, I'm looking to stay in the private sector and public transportation. I want to continue to do business development. And, as a surprise to me, received an email. He remembered engaging with me at the Greater Washington Board of Trade, Land Use and Transportation Committee meetings when I was at Cubic, and decided to give me a call. We went to lunch, and then from that lunch, we had a dinner with some other representatives from CH, and the next thing happened was I was selected and hired to do business development and transit in the Mid-Atlantic, with a focus on Maryland Transit Administration and WMATA. And as a result of having the fare collection background, one of the things that I was asked to do early on was to grow the business in the Southeast collection, and I did. I want to recompete in Baltimore. I want new work with WMATA. I want new work in Charlotte. I want new work in Atlanta with MARTA.
Yeah.
And I want new work with the New Orleans Regional Transit Authority, NORTA. And certainly was able to build business as a seller doer and grow work, and had a really fun time with that. And making that transition, it was more about doing business development and relationship building with people and being a dot connector than say the environment. It was less about the environment that Cubic presented and the environment that CH presented, but more about doing the same type of work from a BD perspective and leveraging the relationships you had with existing clients. Because in fact, some clients remain my clients from my transition from Cubic to CH. I was just in another role at the same client. And in fact, I had to keep telling them in meetings, no, I'm not with Cubic. I'm with CH. I represent you. I'm the owner's agent now. And they are on the other side of the table. And that's one of the lessons I tell people all the time. You have to think about how you treat people along the way in your career. You never know where you may be sitting and who may be across the table from you. And if you treat someone badly along the way, they could very well wind up being someone that could select you for an opportunity, select you for a new job, or, they could be your advisor in some capacity. So,
Right.
there's a story or there's a life lesson in not burning bridges, because the
Right.
tables can turn. And for folks that are in the public transportation space, it's very incestuous in the sense that you can
Mhm.
be in one capacity one day and another the next. And you never know who may be your boss or who may be selecting you to do X, Y, Z. So you
Yeah.
have to be mindful of that as you go through this career of yours. For those that
Yeah.
are listening and matriculating in their career, thinking about how you treat people, because it
Right.
certainly makes a difference. And at the end of the day, I think that's been one of the highlights of my career. I've had very great relationships with individuals, and remain, my credibility remains high, my integrity remains high, because I've treated people fairly and I've treated people right, and they in turn have done the same thing for me.
Absolutely. So I just to share a little bit about my history as well, which is complementary, is I was at Bechtel for 17 years, and
Hmm.
most of my passion was in the rail and transit space. So I really get the connection, and the working all over the world is a really important thing on these relationships. But this is the thing, before we jump into the leadership part, which I think you've infused beautifully into this story, is that I'd like to just remind your audience that there's lots of you that's involved in with mayors and different groups of organizations, but just to stay with COMPTO and APTA, look at where those threads are. There's where those really, you went through the leadership program. Look at those.
Hmm.
It's like it helped to shape you with the great leaders that you were around. You got to make choices about the people that you wanted to emulate or mentor with, or become a mentor, become a champion, and receive that gift as well. So let's go into your leadership, because you've got a just even talking about how we treat one another. Perhaps this is an opportunity to talk about your CEO if you wish to. I just want to infuse the who you are and how developed and helped other people to develop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So working at Jacobs, we certainly have a transformational leader in Steve Demetrio, who's our chair and CEO. And one of the things that Steve preaches is that we live inclusion here, and it's about creating a space where everyone can be authentic and bring their whole selves to work. And I certainly appreciate his leadership, because he not only talks the talk, he walks the walk. And Steve has an expectation that the things he says he wants to get done will get done, and he makes sure that they do. And as we think about a leader like him, and how that's influenced me and some of the thoughts I have here, we've created a workspace where I feel like people can be very comfortable. And what I mean by that is we had a commitment to inclusion and diversity well before the murder of George Floyd last year. And if anything, the murder of George Floyd accelerated a lot of the activities that we already had in place here. And one of the things that we did is we had roughly over 200 what we call courageous conversations that was started by one of my colleagues, Denise LeMaison Bell. Started these courageous conversations as part of Harambe, the Black Employee Network here at Jacobs. And as a
Mm.
result of what happened with George Floyd, we started having global courageous conversations calls. And Steve Demetrio led the very first one, and led the second one, actually, along with his direct reports. He wanted us to tee one up, and he worked with Denise and other leaders in Harambe to make it happen, because he felt like we needed to have a space where people could express how they felt and really share, because there were a lot of people on edge. There were a lot of high emotion.
Mhm.
And one of the things we did here at Jacobs is start double calls, and they would last 2, sometimes 3 hours, and people really part their heart about experiences that they've had right here at Jacobs, or just experiences they've had in life in general as it relates to racial discrimination and just straight up hate that they were experiencing. And he created this forum, and then that ultimately conversations among regions around the globe. So they were global calls where anybody could join. Then there were specific offices that would host their own calls, and we would talk about this thing, and it continued for months, and we still have these conversations here at Jacobs. It didn't go away. We find that here at Jacobs we can talk about politics, we can talk about religion, and it's not viewed negatively. People are open to share how they feel for or against. I mean, there were people that didn't always agree with everything that was being said. And in fact, sometimes they would get on the call and express themselves too. But the point is, we created an open forum where we could do that here. And, I appreciate the culture that we've created here at Jacobs, where people can feel like they can say how they feel. Now, obviously, we don't have it down 100%, and it's not all great, but it's certainly an improvement, and it's certainly better than a lot of other spaces and experiences people have at other employers. So I have to say, this is a great place and a great space to work at Jacobs, because I feel like you can bring your whole self to work. So, that's what I share.
I really value this because you're speaking about the humanity of the culture in the space. And I would imagine that because of Steve's leadership and how it has affected you, it has to transform into a positive business practice for your employees as well as your clients, because that's a gravitational force if I ever heard one, because it really is, it's so clean. I know it's not easy. I'm in the human resources space. I absolutely know it's not easy, but just to have a venue to talk, it's got to make the business really excel, because you have community, right?
Absolutely. There's strong community here. I mean, we have 8 employee networks where you can get involved, and whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's women, whether it's physically or cognitively challenged, whether it's One World, where folks from different ethnicities around the globe can come together, whether it's related to whether it's in LASE, Latina, Hispanic community. I'm not naming them all. You start naming them, it's like, hey, you didn't mention us, VetNet for the veterans. So there are all these different groups that you can join, and you don't have to be one or the other. They're open to all employees. You can be an ally to some. I'm an ally to PRISM, which is our LGBTQ network, and I'm an ally in the women's network, but I'm also a member of Harambe and the Black Employee Network. And it's created a culture where you can feel a sense of, but it also creates a network internally that you can rely on when you might feel like you're the only face in the room in a particular meeting. You have the backing of so many in your network where you can reach out to the network, where there are literally people not only across the United States, but that are part of your network, and you can rely on one another. If you want to move to another country, there are people that in your company that you can reach out to. Want to move and continue to work for Jacobs and do something different. Or if you just want to bounce an idea off somebody, or if you're traveling for work and you're going to different offices, you can use those networks to connect with people in those offices where you traditionally would not know people in those places. So it certainly made a difference in the way that we operate. It's influenced not only us, but like you said, it has an impact on our client, because what we're learning and what we're developing here, this culture that we're developing, we're now able to sell that as a service to our clients and say, hey, we're working on it, we're perfecting it, and we're going to help you do the same thing. And this is how we've done it. And now we're going to apply it to you. It also creates a culture where our clients see us being intentional about representing them and looking like them, and to the table that you wouldn't historically see, especially in the A&E space, where, let's be frank, you don't see a lot of blacks and browns. There's a lot of white men and then white women, but you see the black and brown leaders and employees. And I think Jacobs is really being intentional about elevating folks, and we are, because we have an action plan for advancing justice and equality, and we're intentional about making sure that people of color are being mentored, black people in particular, because there is a specific emphasis on Black employees, because that is another layer where we've seen a deficiency in certain leadership roles, and we want to see representation. And I think one of the things that we have to remember, we have these conversations all the time, Sally, about making sure that we have representation, but we also have to make sure that these people are qualified to do the job. It's not just to check the box or to say, oh, we have this Black employee or this Hispanic employee. These individuals also qualify for those roles. We're not just bringing somebody to the table to check a box. We're bringing somebody that actually has the skill set and has always possessed the skill set, but they've been overlooked. And, as one of my colleagues just said to me today, it says, discrimination. And there can be all of these things out here that we're trying to, and I'll just say how I see it. We're trying to teach white people how to empathize and understand and relate, but white people don't hold you back from being ready for the opportunity. I've never been held back from my education. Nobody's ever stopped me from advancing and gaining degrees. Nobody's ever stopped from studying on my own. Nobody's ever stopped me from gaining the knowledge that I needed to be in the role that I'm in today. And certainly there are barriers that have been put in place. There are ceilings that have been in place that we've had to break in. But there's no excuse for not being ready when that opportunity presents itself. And I think we miss that sometimes. You don't just select someone for the sake of saying we've done it, we've now checked the box. We select someone not only because of that, but because they are ready, they're prepared, they've acquired the knowledge, they have the skills and possess what it takes to be in that position. And there are tons of great people of color, Black people that have great talent. And for whatever reason, they've been overlooked. But there is absolutely no excuse why we shouldn't be ready, so that when those barriers are broken down, when those doors are open, that we have the ability to step right through and knock them dead every time. So you got to kind of be mindful of that, because I don't want to get caught up in this I&D thing for the sake of I&D. No, also let's be ready for the opportunity, because so many people miss that. I think it's Vince Lombardi says everybody has the will to win, but everybody doesn't have the will to plan to win, or something to that effect. And you got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared when that door or that opportunity presents itself. And there's absolutely no excuse for not being ready.
Brilliant. I think there's an opportunity here with your audience, Freddie, to couple of things I'd like to do a shout out about is those of you that are interested in looking at opportunities at Jacobs. I would highly recommend that you look at their website. Also, I would like for you to consider associations like COMPTO, APTA, and ASCE, just because that's a growth opportunity as well. And also, too, is don't let anything hold you back. This is really an inspiring conversation for me, because people really need this, Freddie. People need to hear a voice around this. And also, just one other thing is Freddie's got a beautiful LinkedIn page, so kindly look at that. Freddie, we have one more part of this equation to talk about, and I think you've done a masterful job to help us all. Could you talk a little bit about what you see in the future? I would like, because of our pre-interview time together, which was a great opportunity for me, I'd like you to fuse in COVID into your conversation about future, because I think you really did a nice summary on that as well. And I think it's for this current time in our lives, we just need to have a voice around that as well. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to start there as soon as I get this quote right. The quote I was trying to say, everyone has a will to win, but very few have the will to prepare to win. So I think I paraphrased it pretty good. Vince Lombardi. And my other favorite quote that I share with everybody now, especially in this I&D space, people are like, why are we talking this? Why is this so important? Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that is a quote from James Baldwin. James Baldwin, the famous Black author who lived from 1924 to 1987. And I quoted that almost every time I got on a courageous conversation. Not
Could you say it again
everything,
for
yeah,
us, Wayne?
not everything that is faced can be changed, but
Yeah.
nothing can be changed until it is faced. And the reason why we continue to talk about race, the reason why we continue to talk about diversity is because we have to change. And we can't sit here and act like these challenges and they're not going to change if we don't deal with them. And people have to get uncomfortable with the uncomfortable. Some of these topics are not very comfortable to talk about, but you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable and talk about them until you start to see and make the change that you want to see the outcome to be. So going on to the future, where we're going, we did talk a bit about COVID and just the impact on the workplace. Just think about this for a second. And there's so much I can think about, disruptors, the digital transformation, and all of this kind of ties hand in hand. For years, there are lots of folk, and I say there were the naysayers out there that didn't believe people could actually get their job done from working from home. Like, how are we going to do this if you're at home? The flexible schedule. And now here we are a year later, a year and some change later, and we were forced to do something that a lot of people didn't believe we could do. Think about how much technology was accelerated during this COVID time, where we were doing some calls via video conferencing every now and then, and here we went almost 100%, whether you're on Zoom, whether you're on Teams or some other Google Meet or whatever the platform is or was. You wound up having to modify how you do business. And everybody had to take a step back and assess how they do business. And here we are with a future that will not go back to how we used to be. I don't think anybody is going 100% back to the way that it used to be, even things that are required in person, like eating in a local restaurant. Many restaurants moved their seating to outside. They took over a portion of the roadway, in fact, in some cities. And I don't think those cities are going to give those streets back to cars. So there's all of this
Interesting
transformation.
point.
Yeah. There's
Wow.
all of this transformation that's happened with the hybrid workspace, where it's going to be people that go back in the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5. There are going to be very few conferences going forward that won't have a hybrid component to it, or some way of allowing people to access the conference information, from home if they can't make it. There are going to be very few instances where it's 100% all there. And there are going to be tons of hybrid situations. In fact, we've concluded that we're going to save tons of money in real estate at Jacob. So we're reducing our footprint by reducing the size of offices and recreating the offices, in the sense that they're no longer places for people to sit and just work, but they're more of a collaboration space where teams come together for specific projects or pursuits or whatever the case may be. But a lot of the work is still done in the home or the remote work environment. We had a return to work. I guess we would be on return to work 2.0 now here at Jacobs. We thought we were going to have a certain amount of people return. Those numbers were significantly lower than what was expected. And then we had these variants of COVID that have impacted us longer than we expected. And so we are return to work 2.0. What we thought cuts we were making, we made, but now we're making even bigger cuts. And what I mean by cuts is reducing floor space, cutting out the number of floors, or even eliminating offices altogether. And, just as recent as last week, I saw a couple of emails where one office is being eliminated, it's being consolidated with another location. One office that had one floor eliminated is now eliminating another floor. So I think it went from 5 to 4 floors. Now it's going from 4 to 3 floors. And, that in and of itself is enough change for us for a while. Nobody knew that COVID was going to have the impact that it had and just change the way we think. Think about how quickly we adapted and got people to working remotely. Now, certain industries slower to adapt than others, but eventually most of us have gotten there. And restaurants that didn't offer carry out, now there's carry out.
Different,
Folks,
everything's different, right?
yeah,
We
think
just
about
had
it.
to adjust. It's really
Yeah,
great.
it is. I mean, think about Grubhub and Uber Eats. Those are companies that were like coming up and they were
Right.
there, but now then
Right.
all of a sudden they took off because this was the thing
Mhm.
everybody really needed to do. So they were like seeing the future, but the future wasn't happening fast enough. And all of a sudden, here we are, fast forward November 2021, and we are all doing things that we never expected to be doing this quickly in our lifetime. And it, you
Mhm.
know, the digital transformation happens pretty rapidly anyway. And then we had a situation like COVID that accelerated our already fast digital transformation. So think about technology disruption, how much of that has played a role, and think about where we're going. There's all of this advancement with zero emissions and what's going to happen with vehicles. But not only do vehicles change, but all of the infrastructure supporting vehicles has to change too. And all of that is going to have such a phenomenal impact on this A&E, this infrastructure space that we can imagine it. A lot of it we can't imagine, but there are still things we can't imagine. But when you start talking about microgrid technology, where you're going to be able to charge an electric vehicle while it's in movement on the street and things of that sort,
Oh
people, yeah,
no.
yeah, people can't even see that right now, but it's coming and it's going to happen. And we've got to get ourselves prepared. I mean, we're already behind the eight ball. Think about, as I think and as I say that, I can't help but it's like there's still a digital divide in our country, and there's still people that are being left behind just
Yeah.
because of the digital divide. When my kids started doing school from home last year,
Mm.
I said, what about all the parents that don't
Yeah.
have the ability to either one have Wi-Fi in their home because they were only
Mhm.
accessing it through their smartphone,
Right.
or you don't have the ability to upgrade your Wi-Fi to handle
Yeah.
the increased bandwidth that's now needed
Right.
because of all the activity in the house. And there's so many people that did not have this access, and people don't think about that all the time. Everybody doesn't have it like you have it. You
I
know,
know.
you
I
got to
feel
think
like I've
about,
taken it for granted,
yeah, you got to
right?
think about the lowest common denominator in so many
Right.
instances where there are people,
Yeah.
I asked the teachers before COVID and before working from home, I said, you all are given all of these assignments that are now on computer, and you have to do this on a digital platform. This is before now. The kids were going to school. I
Mhm.
asked the teacher, I said, how do you all address the kids that don't have access to Wi-Fi at home? And the teacher
Right.
said, I never thought about that. I don't even know
No.
how we're handling that in the school system. Yeah.
Oh
And I was
God.
like, you've got to think about these things. And so imagine, as we
Mhm.
made this transition, so many of us were able to do this job. I had a professional gig that allowed me to have access to Wi-Fi and the laptop and all of that. If you didn't have that professional gig, if you were blue collar or you were working in the restaurant hospitality business, what happened when there is nobody staying in hotels, when the restaurants don't have any business? How did those
Right.
people make it?
I
We
know.
go as we grow and as we transcend, as there's a digital transformation, we also have to be mindful that there is a skill. There are people out reinvent themselves or develop skill sets that may not be applicable today, but are going to certainly be applicable tomorrow. And we're going to
Right.
have to make sure that they can come along. Or, what happens? Everybody suffers when you don't take care of the least, because when you didn't think about the essential workers, those restaurant workers, those hospitality workers, even the
Right.
professionals that want to go to this restaurant, I want to stay in this hotel, you're impacted. So when you
Right.
don't think about that are doing some of these essential worker jobs, ultimately it impacts you. If that bus operator can't drive that bus and people can't get back and forth to work, How people gonna, if they can't go to work, how those businesses operate and how they're gonna service the people that need that. And don't get me started. I feel like I
Yeah.
already am, but there's so many aspects of this that,
Mm.
you know, big data, digital transformation, sensors on everything. We have more data than we've ever had in our lifetime. And we're able to crunch stats and numbers. And, as you and I sit in these devices,
Right.
they're not only allowing us to have this podcast through a podcast app, but they're also collecting data about how much time we spend on the screen, how much time we spend on different apps, where we're sitting geographically. We're geo-mapped right now. Like, it knows I'm at home, and wherever you're sitting, it knows that you're there, and somebody's collecting that data, and they're doing with that data to generate, somebody's monetizing it in some way, and somebody's using it to create something new and different for all to know about, just because of the collection of data that's happening right now. So there's so much out there that's impacting this business every day. I mean, let alone the new infrastructure bill and the infrastructure dollars that are coming down the pipe,
Oh,
the
yeah,
state of good repair and all of that, because you can't forget about that either. There's a whole lot of infrastructure out here that needs to be addressed, not new stuff, existing stuff, so that we don't have a situation where things are falling apart.
Right. Well, one of the reasons, Freddie, why I was very, very committed to this podcast platform myself was to not only to thank you all, but also because of this infrastructure bill and the requirement and the need for rehabilitation, as well as new projects on the horizon. But I also, I want to just, speaking to your audience, I just hope all of you share this podcast with others, because it's really, I think there's a messaging here. There's a whole lot of messages you all could take away from this process, but helping each other out and just being, when you talked about people that don't have the Wi-Fi services that we take for granted, I mean, it just dawned on me how life is so easy for me and for you and for your family. And so if we really need to be asking those questions. Freddie, we're getting close to the end of our time together, but I wouldn't even know how to wrap it up because there's just so much good stuff here. But how would you like to, I told you, could you talk about your dad for a sec? Because every single person that I interviewed speaks to their father or some family member. So is there anything you want to say about your dad before we wrap it up? Because that was impressive to me when we did because he said he walked into a room and everybody knew him. And I think that's who you are. What would you like to say? I'm putting you
Well,
on the spot.
no, it's all good. And, there's so many things I could say about this guy. But from a business development perspective, it's all about relationship building. And, my dad was a the majority of his life. And, so I got it honest when it comes to sales. And the one thing that I said to you previously is that, I'm always to be more like him in this specific area where he can go in the room. And not only does he know everybody leaves the room, everybody knows him. And I have not mastered that yet. And I said, if I can master that ability to do that, who knows? The sky's the limit. I can go to baseball practice all year and speak to everybody. My dad comes to one practice and everybody knows my dad is, a Marine and Vietnam, and he did all these things. And I'm like, dude, like, how did they know all this about you? Like, you came to practice and everybody is like, how's your dad? Where's your dad? And he's certainly, I can't talk about my dad without talking about my mom, though. And, she was the one who raised me. And what she instilled in me, if nothing else, is I saw my mom go to work every day, rain, sleet, snow, hell or high water. And that's something that's always stuck with me, that, you get up, you go to school every day, you go every day, you go to work every day. For me, not to work would be thing, because I've always worked. I've always had a job, if not more than one job. And, that's just the things that I picked up from my parents, the relationship building, the gift of gab. and the consistency. I tell people all the time, your presence is probably 90%. Just show up. You don't have to say a whole lot, but just be present. And I've found that being present and also saying yes when asked to do something or serve just has led to bigger and better things in life in general. And, I talked about a lot of organizations, and one of the roles that I also have here is I serve as a liaison for Jacobs with several national organizations like U.S. Conference of Mayors, National League of Cities, Community Leaders of America's, African American Mayors Association. And, most recently, I've started getting involved with ACEC, and that's the American Council of Engineering Companies. So I keep adding these acronyms to the list, and I'm having a really good time with the external. It all plays a hand in my day-to-day work. I kind of string it all together. I think I told you this. I don't see one outside the other, but they all work together for the good. In the sense that they're all part of what I do here at Jacobs. And having those relationships in the various organizations leads to opportunities where we can leverage, whether it's getting in front of someone that's an important decision maker about a potential opportunity, or just being able to connect with my colleagues here at Jacobs. So I'm having a really good time. We could talk on and on, Sally. I know we've got to go. But I want to say thank you again. I want to thank you. I want to thank all those that had an impact on me, and the support of my wife, Tasha, who I would be remiss if I didn't mention her, because she's in an environment in our home that allows me to do so many other things that I do. And, all while we raise 4 kids together. And it certainly is, due in part to who she is and who she's allowed me to become as well.
I'm so touched by this entire story. And I just want you all to know that Kim Slaughter, the president of Sistra, was the one that recommended that Freddie participate in this podcast. So that's another dear friend that actually rooted you on today. But you, audience, you have a job to do. Our job together is to help spread the word about this podcast. And just so you all know, is that this will be on multiple sites, YouTube, and we also send out a distribution to thousands of people, a newsletter with Freddie's podcast on it. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Freddie, I'm so honored to be with you. And I told you the other day, I said I could talk to you for a month. I mean, it's very inspiring. So do you have a quick another quote before we wrap it up? I'm putting you on the spot because I know you're a quote guy. One more.
My goodness. President Obama said something to the effect, be the change that you want to see. Not getting it are absolutely correct. But I always tell people, instead of talking about, well, it's not this or it's not that, or I'm going to change and I'm going to go to a different organization, or I'm going to change and go to a different chapter. You're going to have the same challenges wherever you go. And, at the end of the day, why don't you be the change that you want to see? Instead of talking about it, be about it. And, really, what it is for me. And I was looking for that Obama quote. I can't find it right now.
You give them an assignment to look it up, right?
Yeah, look it up. Yeah, that's the Obama quote. And it's something about, being the change that, here we go. Yeah.
Oh, good. We got it.
Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. That's what he says.
Wonderful.
That's what he says.
Freddie, we have to say goodbye. Thank you. You will be published very soon. Have a great time, okay? See you later.
All right, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.